Hi, and welcome to this video about hearing and transcribing tone. My name is Hilde Gunnink.
And my name is Allen Asiimwe.
Have you ever struggled to hear tone correctly? Or do you even avoid working on tone languages because you don't know how to deal with tone? No need to worry, in this video Allen and I will take you through the basics on the functions of tone and how you can identify and transcribe tone correctly. The majority of the world's languages are tone languages. This map shows languages with tone as red dots and languages without tone as white dots. As you see, tone languages occur everywhere, but are especially common in Africa and Southeast Asia. If you are working on an African language, it's smart to start from the assumption that the language has tone.
So what is tone? Tone has to do with the difference in pitch between high and low pitch. All languages make use of pitch differences, but in a language like English, differences in pitch are only used for intonation, for instance, to make the difference between a statement and a question. In a question in English, the pitch typically rises in the end, but in a tone language, differences in pitch are used to express different meanings, the same way languages use consonants and vowels. So, in a tone language like Ruchiga, a Bantu language of Uganda, the word that is spelled like angel can be pronounced in two different ways. These ways are distinguished by tone, and they make for two totally different words. Angel, house, has two low tones, and angel, which means gray hair, has a high tone on the first syllable.
The use of pitch differences to mark the distinction between different lexemes is called lexical tone. All languages use pitch, but only tone languages use pitch to contrast meanings between different words.
Tone languages can also use tone to make different grammatical structures. In Ruchiga, the difference between the perfect and the present progressive is made with tone. Namureva, I have seen him or her. Namureva, he or she is seeing him or her.
So transcribing pitch in tone languages is very important. You wouldn't transcribe a language without vowels, so you also shouldn't transcribe a tone language without tone. You should even do this when tone is not the main focus of your research. Tone plays a role in all areas of grammar, so even if you are focused on analyzing morphology or syntax, you have to pay attention to tone.
A common way to transcribe tone in African languages uses diacritics on the vowels that carry the tone. High tone is marked with an acute accent, and a low tone is marked with a grave accent. Languages can have up to 5 tone levels, from super high to mid, low, and super low.
Some people choose to leave tones unmarked, but this could be confusing. It might not be clear whether a vowel is unmarked because it is low, or because you forgot the tone marking, or because you don't know what the tone is. So it's recommended to mark all the tones and not only the high tones. You should at least do this in your initial field notes. Once you are more confident about your transcription and you prepare your data for publication, you can choose a system where you leave one type of tone unmarked, as long as you are consistent and as long as you tell the reader how your tone transcription works.
The tones we have seen so far are level tones. These are tones that stay at the same pitch throughout their articulation. Contour tones go from one pitch level to another during their articulation. For instance, in Ruchiga, there are falling tones such as the penultimate syllable in the verb okutamba, to cure, to heal. Falling tones are transcribed with a circumflex, and rising tones are transcribed with a colon.
Transcribing tone with diacritics is the official IPA system, but sometimes you need a system that is more specific or simpler. Alternative tone transcription systems use numbers, illustrated for Geluk. The 5 indicates a super high tone and the 3 indicates a mid-tone, showing that this is a contour that starts high and ends mid. You can also draw the pitch contour you hear with lines that go higher for a high tone and lower for a low tone, like this. The advantage of this system is that you can make very precise transcriptions of the tones you hear, but the downside is that you probably are writing more tonal details than are phonologically relevant in the language. Just like with consonants and vowels, there can be a difference between the surface tone, which you hear, and the underlying tone, which you have to deduce from the surface by identifying tone rules. There are many factors that can influence tonal realization, such as the context and the nature of preceding or following words, syllables, or sounds. When you transcribe tone, you always transcribe the surface tones, the tones that you hear. In your tonal analysis, you try to figure out what the underlying tones are and what the rules and processes are that change underlying tones into surface tones.
One of the factors that play a role in how tone is realized is whether a word is at the end of an utterance or not. In Ruchiga, high tones spread to the end of the word if they are followed by another word, but don't spread if the word is at the end of a sentence. The word for bicycle in Ruchiga, egari, has a high tone, and this only spreads if there is another word after it. In this case, a demonstrative, egareji.
Even preceding and following consonants can affect tone. Tones are a bit lower after a voiced obstruent and conversely are a bit higher after a voiceless obstruent. This lowering effect of voiced obstruents is called depression, and in some languages this is not only an automatic phonetic process but also plays a role in the phonology. In Xitsonga, for instance, depressor consonants block high tone spread. Normally a high tone spread towards the right, as you see with the word mufana. The syllable mu is normally low-toned, but when it is preceded by a high tone on the preceding I, it becomes high-toned. But in the word for impala, which starts with a depressor consonant, there is no high tone spread.
When two high tones are separated by a low tone, the second high tone tends to be a bit lower than the first. This process is called downdrift, an automatic process. As you keep on speaking, you slowly run out of breath, and the tones you produce tend to be lowered. When your utterance ends and you draw more breath, the pitch ceiling is reset and your high tones go back to their original pitch.
Note that this is different from down step, where there is no overt low tone in between.
Because context can have such a big influence on tone, it is important to compare words in the same context. One way to do this is to simply compare words in isolation, so a word that is pronounced by itself. For instance, as an answer to the question, what is the word for this or that in your language? But some languages neutralize tone contrast in isolation, so you may need to ask for words in a frame sentence. You can put words in a frame sentence like, I said X yesterday. That makes sure that the word is not at the end of the utterance, and it also makes sure that you can compare different words in the same context.
So these are some of the factors that can influence how tones are realized. Now we turn to some of the practical aspects for hearing and transcribing tone. It can be difficult to hear tone correctly, especially if you're not a native speaker of a tone language. There are some tricks to make this easier. First, you can ask a speaker to whistle or hum the tones of a word. So Alan, what is the word for house in Ruchiga?
Enju.
And can you hum that?
Mm-mm.
Thank you. You can also repeat the word back to the speaker and ask their correction. Make sure that you don't use a questioning intonation, but focus on pronouncing the word exactly the way the speaker does. So Alan, could you give the word for house again?
Enju.
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 Repeat again.
Enju.
Good.
Thank you. A third thing you can do is to compare words. Sometimes it's easier to tell whether two words have the same pattern than it is to identify what exactly the tone pattern is. So asking a speaker to pronounce two words after each other, or even a whole list, can help you determine whether they have the same tonal realization. You have to be careful, though, that the speaker doesn't use a so-called list intonation. People tend to have a special intonation to indicate that they're about to say something else, and this may mess with the tonal pattern of the word.
Can software help? Pratt, the software for phonetic analysis, can also give you a pitch trace which shows you the exact pitch of each voiced segment. However, most linguists advise against it. It would give you sometimes too much detail and sometimes not enough. It would also be very time consuming. So it is good to learn how to perceive tones yourself. Nobody is tone deaf. Everyone can learn how to hear tone.